What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a physician, a scientist, author, inventor with multiple patents on human and veterinary medicines and devices. He's an entrepreneur, inspirational speaker, and so much more. Please welcome Dr. Ravi Iyer. Dr. Ravi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Deanna. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. It's hard enough, I feel like, for someone to get their doctorate to become a doctor, but then you added all these other things onto your, I call them like your, not like your labels, but your title, like your expertise. And so you are just like totally type A, totally driven. Can you kind of like give us an idea or just kind of give us a backstory on why doing all these things are so important to you?
Well, my focus all of my life, right from childhood, was I've been fascinated with life, what makes life tick. And even as a child, I used to be intrigued by the zebra fish, by frogs, by nature.
Yeah.
And I would go and explore the muddy ponds behind my house and so on and so forth. But as I went on in high school, it became clear to me that is what I wanted to be as a physician. There were some key elements in between that really bothered me a lot. I had a nephew who was very young. He had my same last name, my same first name, Ravi. But he was born with a heart defect, with what is known as Fallot's tetralogy, very common heart defect. And he passed away at the age of 6 as complications after, he had several cardiac surgeries, but the last one was really difficult and he couldn't survive it. And I was close to that boy. He was 6 years old. I was more like 14. And that was pretty much when I decided that I'm going to be a physician. When one thing led to another, I decided that I would be a physician. And then I started focusing more and more on the biological aspects. Then along the way, how every life has light and dark.
Yeah.
You really, for a passion to catch fire, you need a little bit of ignition. You need a little bit of challenge. You need a little bit of something that is traumatic enough to wake you up, but not so traumatic as to kill you.
Yeah.
And you need to have that. And that came by way of my dad, who was a very, Midwestern kind of ethic, where the praise was sparse and the comparison or the criticism was sharp. And in an effort to kind of drive myself to become worthy of his praise, I started working harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
It's a long story, but that pretty much drove me for the next 50 years or so, all through my life. And then after a certain point, it became a habit. It no longer became about getting his praise. It became about becoming who I am. But at that critical phase between the age of 14 till around the age of 22, it was very much about getting my father's approval and recognition.
Do you think that is mainly because you're male or because of your culture?
It was more because my personality was different than my dad.
Okay.
So my dad's personality resonated more with my brother.
I gotcha. Okay.
So he could very easily see and identify with the choices that my brother made. And it was harder for him to identify the choices I made.
Yeah.
So coupled with that was his enormous affection for both his children, So that would manifest as concern that I would actually not do well.
I gotcha. Okay.
But so he became overprotective. And when he became overprotective, I did not see that as a plus. I saw that as I was not good enough,
Yeah.
that he had to steer me all the time. And I rebelled against it. If I had been a more pliant person, more compliant person, I would not have rebelled. But I, being more independent, was making choices not consistent with what he would have liked, but at the same time insisting on going my own way. So all of that led to a unique mixture of almost of a conflicted love relationship, which drove me for about the remainder of my life.
I love it. Well, I mean, hey, either way, it got you there. You're there now, and you've done
Yes.
amazing things. So you're a doctor, and you've been involved with vaccine development and drug regulation research, and you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you've got all these different things, and so now you just came out with a book, The Reaper's Dance, which is fascinating. So, kind of, can you tell us exactly I mean, you are just going light speed into all these different areas where you have this incredible knowledge and expertise. And I know we were talking about kind of the direction you wanted to take this conversation. What is your motivation now that you want people to really know and how you want to help the world?
See, very early on, I became fascinated by what life works, what makes life work, and when life doesn't work, how do you make it work? But very early on, I started realizing that the real business of life is to empower people. There's no other purpose for life. And in this process, you empower yourself by empowering people. Once I understood that when I was somewhere in my medical school, halfway through medical school, I started focusing less and less about what rewards I got in terms of recognition, and more on actually the patient in front of me, the person in front of me.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of a shift that carried throughout. So I started by, initially I was training myself as a physician, and I got my training as a physician. But then when I finished my training in India as a physician, I found myself very frustrated because I would see these patients with tuberculosis and leprosy and other infectious diseases, and we would not have the right amount of treatment modalities. So I could diagnose it, but I could not treat it. And I got frustrated with that. So I said, you know what, I'm going to actually get into research. I want to find out why is it that we can't fix these problems.
Yeah.
So rather than just sit back and frustrate, my natural instinct was, okay, I'm going to jump ship and go into research. And I went and did my doctoral degree in biochemistry.
Wow.
And molecular biology. When I did that, I started getting into vaccine technology. The lab in which I was working was involved with both tuberculosis vaccines, trying to develop vaccines for tuberculosis, and also vaccine for malaria. Right now, just about 2 weeks ago, the WHO announced a successful vaccine for malaria that produces a 13% drop. I was not involved in that, but it was extremely validating for me to read that piece of news and to know that, this little part of my past is now a reality for so many millions of people. So that's how it happened from there. From there, that brought me to a point where I got offered a postdoctoral fellowship as a research fellow in medicine at Harvard. And I came to Harvard as a postdoctoral fellow, doing an extension of the work that I had done doing my doctoral work. And that produced a small progress in publications and stuff. And then I ended up getting a Young Investigator Award that brought me to Washington, D.C., to present my work. And over there, I met the program director for George Washington medical center, and he offered me a residency position.
Wow.
And then, so each thing dovetailed into the next phase, almost as if there was some higher power pushing you down a path. And it was almost intuitive the way it went. And each time there was no regret moving away from the previous story to a new story, because the common thread all throughout was empowering people.
Yeah.
So because the common thread was the same, I had no regret moving from one phase to another. I never felt, oh my God, I have to start again. It was never a question of starting again. It was only a question of, oh, this is a new method of how to empower people. This is a new way to do what I did before. So each one was a new tool in my toolbox. And then as I went on from there, at one day in 2007, my mom was visiting me, and she could not sleep in the night because her leg was hurting from arthritis, and she could not tolerate ibuprofen because it would tear her stomach up.
Yeah.
So because I had all this chemistry background, my biochemistry background, I concocted a liniment in my kitchen that helped her. So that became the Dr. Iyer's Myorub, and that went on and got an FDA certification for as an OTC drug, and it got a patent on that. It became popular in the clinic. And out of that arose a company called Active Power.
Yes.
And then my dog injured its leg one day, strained a muscle, and I used the same liniment I was using on my mom. I rubbed it on my dog. My dog felt better. So then I took that liniment, modified it, and made a dog version of it, and that brought out a veterinary medicine. So in this way, one thing led to another, and it was this constant thing about empowering life. It doesn't matter whether it was a human life or it was a animal life. It doesn't matter. It was empowering life to be better than what it could be before. And that was what drove me right through into the pandemic. And in the pandemic, when clinics were closing down, we said, no, we are not going to close down. We're going to keep open, and we are going to find a way to empower people to survive through this and show them how to live it. And we became the busiest clinic during the pandemic, doing testing inside and outside of the parking lot for all Northern Virginia. Started doing house calls on COVID patients, stuff that people would not believe could be done. And at the end of the pandemic, I had a conversation on Thanksgiving of November 22nd of 2022. And we were talking about how this divisive rhetoric where people were thinking of us versus them was contaminating the conversation of the world around us. And I said, you know what, somebody needs to write the story of the pandemic, because people will forget. And, the story of the pandemic needs to be written in a way that the lessons are not forgotten. So I started writing, and that brought out the book. So that's your whole story.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot to it. And I'm sure we could get deeper into each one of those avenues. But what are you hoping people get from the Reaper's Dance?
Life is meant to be lived. And you live life only when you live in the experience of life and not get caught up in the story of life. At every point, when you get an experience, your mind automatically concocts a story about it.
Yeah.
It concocts a judgment about it. The judgment has elements of what you think about yourself, what you think about other people. But the judgment and the narrative is only an approximation of reality. It is not an accurate representation of reality. If you remain focused on the experience of life, you can see that the narrative that pops up first in your head is not necessarily the correct narrative.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily the empowering narrative. Usually the first narratives that bump up are usually disempowering narratives. They're usually narratives of fear, of self-doubt, of inability or disability. If you stay in the experience long enough, you can start seeing that you don't have to get suckered into that narrative.
Yeah.
You can actually craft a narrative. You can pick and choose which narrative comes out.
Yeah.
And if you stay focused on a principle that life is only for empowerment, then you can make powerful narratives and you can really, really make a difference in people's lives. And in that process, be a part of a different story, one that you craft rather than it's crafted for you.
Yeah.
And that is, in essence, what the Reaper's Dance is all about. How do you live life even when death is staring in the face, when the face of a pandemic that swallowed 25 million lives? How do you live life when you can walk through the mall never knowing which breath is going to bring a toxic virus into you? Yet, how can you live life powerfully in the face of death, in the face of your own mortality? That, in essence, is what the Reaper's Dance is all about.
Mm-hmm.
But that is actually a capsule of what my life has been about.
Yeah.
This is what life needs to be for everyone, and it's possible no matter where you go.
Yeah. So do you think, so when you were staying open and you were helping people move through the pandemic in whatever way whatever modalities you're helping them with, were you, how popular were you with your peers? Because it was a very, very interesting time for doctors, nurses, for everyone. You laugh at that question. Do you not want to answer?
No, I'll answer it. It was mixed bag.
Yeah.
On March and April, the first 2 months of the pandemic, I had a lot of opposition, a lot of fear, and a lot of self-doubt, and people who said that I was putting the clinic in danger, we would have to shut down, we would get sick, and I had to hold my ground despite all that. But then what happened was, then my closest colleagues saw the value of what I was doing, and they also jumped on board. And then the three of us were moving lockstep forward, and we were becoming very, very successful. And because other doctor practices all around started closing because they did not understand how to remain open and be successful in the midst of a pandemic. They were having to shut doors, and our clinic being open, not just myself as well as my fellow colleagues' clinic, I showed them how to do it, and we were open, so our volume of patients escalated fourfold.
Oh, for sure.
Each doctor was seeing 100 patients a day. That was phenomenal amount. So that brought up in the months of May, June, July, and August, it brought up a lot of resentment among the rest of the physician community because, they were upset that we were able to do well. Well,
yes,
they weren't.
Yeah.
The problem was that I never hid how we did it. They just didn't want to do it.
Right.
We openly shared, this is how we are doing it. Do it if you can. Come on.
Right.
And they would not do it. They kept hiding behind fear. So I couldn't do anything about it, but we just went on ahead. Then by September, October, there was a gradual diminishing of that.
Right.
And then in December, the vaccine started rolling out, and then, the conversation shifted differently.
Yeah.
That was among our peers. You asked me about the peers. In the patient population, it was again a mixed bag. The majority of patients, they were fearful, but when they saw how we were doing the care, willing to even come to their homes and care for them and still remain safe and disease-free, they started really rising to the challenge. And that increased our standing in the community a huge fold.
Yeah.
But there were also the difficult rhetoric about masking versus not masking, about drugs, whether it was ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or vaccines, or about Anthony Fauci and so on and so forth. The problem was that it is not that those conversations were entirely wrong. All those conversations had a little kernel of truth in them, but the problem was the way it was being done. It was being blown out of proportion, and that was unfortunate. But we just had to survive it, and we kept educating as much as we can, and it worked. Most of them worked, especially when you put your own life at stake, when you put your skin in the game. Then people are willing to believe you. When you try to talk without putting anything of yourself at risk, then they won't believe you.
Wow. Well, I love this. I love having this conversation with you. I'm assuming, I mean, you are definitely, I would say, an anomaly in your industry, because, you know, most people jumped on the bandwagon. And for you to have stayed open to help people is great. I personally was a non-masker, non-vaccine. I just was not buying it for me personally, but I support anybody who, whatever. It's all free will. We have free will. So I just want people to stay healthy.
Yep.
Where can people now, this Active Power, do you sell that online, or is that only at your clinic?
No, it's online. It's activepower.com. The active is spelled without an E in it. So it's ACTIVPOWER.
Okay. And where else can people find you? Where can they purchase your book, connect with you, and learn more?
The Reaper's Dance is, look it up on Amazon. The Reaper's Dance, you can look it up with my name, Ravi Iyer, Iyer, and you'll pull it up. I'm there. I have a Goodreads page. I have a channel. I'll put it up in the text so you can put it in the show notes later.
Yes.
I have an author website, so you can. So then Active Power is, but most importantly, people can email me through those channels. I always reply.
Okay.
And you can follow me wherever. I'm writing on my next book. It's on neurodiversity. I have another outlines of 2 more books on paper that I have to flesh out. One is on living free of diabetes and obesity, and the other is Secrets of Nana's Kitchen, my grandmother's kitchen. Small remedies that she would make for us.
I probably would like those, because Nana knows best. Oh my gosh! So I'm going to put all your links in the show notes. So you guys, if you connected with Dr. Ravi and you want to learn more and purchase his book and maybe purchase some of the Active Power, go follow him, go connect with him, send him an email. I'm sure he would love to talk with you, connect with you, and just have you be a part of his community, or him be a part of yours as well. Dr. Ravi, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
There's only one purpose of life. Find out how you can contribute and then work to achieve it. That's all.
Yeah, that was good. I really love that. That was some really deep words of wisdom. That there's a lot of meaning behind that. Well, I'm interested in Nana's her stuff in the kitchen. I'm interested in that, because I'm all about natural remedies. Okay, I'm sorry, that's just me. I'm one of those. But Dr. Ravi, you are an enigma. You're fascinating, and I think that yes, you following your path and just that intuitive path for yourself has been beautiful, and there's clearly a lot more for you to keep doing. So I'm going to keep an eye on you. Thank you so much for writing the book and all that you do.
Thank you.
You are welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon. More dynamic guests.